Hey guys, Patrick Freeman here in Chongqing, China. Welcome back to Life in China with Patrick Freeman. I appreciate you stopping by again. If you could do me a huge favor, hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Also, and last before we transition into the videos, if you could do me a huge favor and consider donating to our channel by clicking on the PayPal link below and just donate a few bucks to help reduce the cost of producing these videos. Your consideration would be very much appreciated. All right, so what are the two videos that I'm going to be uploading, this one being the first and the next one in the next couple of days? Well, the school that I work for had asked me to produce some videos, actually 20 short videos on the cultural differences between the United States and China. And after going through the editing process and uploading it to their particular platform, I realized that a compilation of these 20 videos would make a nice complement to my channel because a lot of these topics are topics I haven't discussed before in the cultural differences between the United States and China. And I think as you're watching these, you'll realize that there are some really big cultural differences that people don't talk about. And that's what these videos are about. As always, guys, thank you for your support, your subscribing, the thumbs up, and the encouragement. I hope all is well with you. Hope you enjoy the video. Take care. Hey guys, this is Patrick Freeman. I'm here to talk about the cultural differences between China and the United States. The first being is the collective versus individualism. In the United States, it's very individualistic. People pride themselves on having their own individual identity, whereas the Chinese are more about the group or about the collective. And a great example is fighting the virus. China has done a phenomenal job in fighting the virus because it's been a team effort, a collective effort. Whereas in the United States, unfortunately, they have struggled with the virus, and part of it is due to the way they look at individuality in America. So that's one of the differences between China and America. So the second difference between China and America regarding the culture is the reputation of the individual. I'll give you an example. Let's say you walked into a store in the United States and the person that works there didn't really give you the service that you expected. In fact, let's say they were disrespectful. In America, we actually might confront that individual. We might also even call their boss. But we would do all of this, in many cases, in front of all these people, maybe in a way to shame that individual into behaving the right way. Whereas in China, you probably wouldn't see that type of confrontation against an individual. That's the second cultural difference between the United States and China. The third cultural difference between the United States and China is business relationships and how we interact with each other. I'll give you an example. In the United States, when somebody is trying to win over a business contract or establish a business relationship, we'll have several meetings, maybe some lunch meetings, maybe some dinner meetings, but business only is the topic of discussion. Whereas in China, in the corporate world, you might have several meetings, dinner meetings, lunch meetings with individuals to establish a social relationship first, really kind of a get-to-know-you meeting. And then business is discussed. It's the complete opposite in the United States. It's all about business first, and then once that business relationship is established, then you can talk about socializing together. The fourth cultural difference between the United States and China is about marriage. In the United States, it is not uncommon for people to get married at 20, 21, 22 years old. Whereas in China, people are encouraged to get married maybe like in their mid-20s or their late 20s. So that is another cultural difference for you between the United States and China. The fifth cultural difference between America and Chinese is when it comes to sweets, and I'm talking about like desserts. In America, we have desserts that are called death by chocolate, and it is unbelievably sweet. Like if you eat the entire thing, you'd probably be sick to your stomach. But Americans love anything that's sweet after a big meal, like ice cream, cookies, chocolate chip cookies, cake, you name it, we like it. We love brownies too. We like lots of syrup on top of our brownies. Whereas in China, the desserts here are not quite as sweet. They're still very good, still very tasty, but not quite as sweet. The sixth cultural difference between the United States and China is humility. In China, humility is a very important trait to have. Whereas in the United States, humility is important, but it's also accepted to brag about your accomplishments. We have a saying in the United States, it's okay to toot your own horn. It's okay to say, hey, look, these are all the great things that I have done in my business, and that's the reason why I'm successful. Whereas in China, people tend not to toot their horn as much as they do in America. The seventh cultural difference between the United States and America is starting meetings. So I used to be in the corporate world for about 20 years, and it was very, very important that you show up at a meeting on time, actually before it began. If you showed up, let's say 10 or 15 minutes early before the meeting, then you were good. If you showed up late, then people would look down upon that. And I've noticed here in China, a lot of times when people have meetings, that people will come in 5 minutes after the meeting was set, 10 minutes, 15 minutes after the meeting was set. And sometimes the meetings won't even start till 30 minutes after the original time. So let's say 2 o'clock, a meeting may not start till 2:30. So it's more, I think the Chinese look at it more as a suggestion as opposed to this is what time the meeting is starting. In America, it's much different. You have to show up for meetings on time. It's better if you show up early. The eighth cultural difference between the United States and China is lack of personal space. And I have experienced that myself when I first came here. China has 1.4 billion people. The United States has about 350 million people, and it's all spread out. Like, for example, where you live. Most people have separate homes. There are apartments and condos, but for the most part, most Americans have a home that they either own or paying off or rent, and these homes are very separate from the neighbors. You're not connected, and you can't hear all the noise and all the talking and all the babies crying and that kind of thing. Whereas in China, people live in high rises. They live in these very tall apartments, and people are all kind of crammed in together, and people are used to that. When you get into a subway here in China, the subways get packed with people and you're all touching each other, whereas in the United States you don't have that because most people have cars in the United States and they drive to work, they commute to work, or they drive to wherever it is that they're going. And so subways are not something that a lot of Americans really experience unless you live in a big town. The ninth cultural difference between the United States and China is grandparents. In China, grandparents are very involved in the upbringing of children. They'll fix breakfast. A lot of times they'll live in the same house or at least live very closely to the grandchildren, but they fix breakfast, they fix lunch and dinner, they take the children to school, they'll pick them up from school because a lot of times the parents are working. But the grandparents come in and help take care of those children or their grandchildren. Whereas in the United States, a lot of grandparents don't even live in the same city that the parents do or the children do, so they're unable to assist in helping raise those children. Because grandparents aren't close to the grandchildren, a lot of the parents will either rely on friends to maybe pick up children from school, or they'll actually take them to child care where they might be there for 7 or 8 hours, and then after work the parents will go pick up the child and take them home. So that's the ninth cultural difference between China and America, is the involvement of grandparents. The 10th cultural difference between China and America is spices. I have learned since living here in Chongqing, China, that the Chinese love spicy food. Now, I know not every single Chinese person likes spicy food, but for the most part, people really like their spices on their food, whether it's hot pot, chuan chuan, shao kao, you name it, spices on it. Whereas in the United States, people do love their spicy food like Mexican food, and they like their hot sauce. But for the most part, Americans like more bland type food, not as many spices in there. The 11th cultural difference between the United States and China is Americans can be more confrontational. If they've got an opinion about something, they're not afraid to share it or maybe get in somebody's face and tell them that they're wrong. So they can be much more confrontational, much more opinionated. Whereas in China, it seems that the Chinese are less confrontational and less likely to get maybe in an argument or in a debate about a particular subject like politics, religion, or whatever it might be. But Americans are a little more confrontational. But they're good people. I love them.